All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Friday for 2025 KMPD Board of Directors meeting. Agenda item 1 is the call to order. So we'll move on to agenda 2, roll call. Sure. Member Fountain here. FC here. Schroeder here. Cooper here. Robert here. Right. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, announcements. Eric.
I'd just like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled KMPD board meeting. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function to speak. And if you're here in person, please approach the podium so the speakers can pick you up while you speak.
I guess all votes will be voice vote today since we're all here in person.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Number 4, corrections, the agenda of the consent calendar. So any corrections? Okay. Item number 5 is comments from the audience. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on anything that's not agendized today that are within our subject matter jurisdiction. You can't take action on comments that are made during this period.
I see none online, Doug.
So, audience here. Okay. Number 6, written comments from the public. So we don't have anything that's written for the general population. We do have things that are in one of our agenda items, so I'll call that out for agenda items later. All right, agenda item number 7 is the adoption of the consent calendar. We have 3 items: board minutes, consent for claims, and offs.
Move to adopt the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, give aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's move on to agenda item 8. There was nothing for 8. 9, move on to item 9A, Maggie's waiver of public meeting. So I'll invite Brandy, our operations manager, to come up and present this topic.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is the public meeting portion of our manganese waiver project. As we've discussed, we received a notice of violation for the secondary contaminant level for manganese, which is an aesthetic MCL if there's not health concerns associated with this level. And we have been working through the process of requesting a waiver from the state from this requirement. Part of this requirement is a public meeting, which we're holding today. We did send that out in our newsletter. We sent it out via email to the customers who are signed up to receive email notifications from us. So thank you for coming. We are also required to review the water system complaint log for complaints that have been received to date regarding manganese, taste, color, odor concerns, and we have not received any to date. So that's noted here in the staff report. We're also required to produce an engineering report, which Ashley Smith from Verdantis is online here. She helped with her team put together the engineering report, and it is an evaluation of all reasonable alternatives and costs for bringing the system into MCL compliance and recommends the most cost-effective and feasible approach. I will talk about that in just a minute, but the last part of our waiver process is the customer survey that I think probably everybody saw. We received quite a lot of feedback from the community in terms of surveys returned to us. We received calls and emails. So thank you to everybody who responded to that. It was closed at noon today. The final results were 60% of our 615 billed customers voted yes on number 2, which was, do you prefer to avoid the cost of treatment and live with the current water quality situation? So that is the number that we will have to take to the state to support our request for a waiver here. 50% response is required. We received more than 50% response. We received more than 50% saying that they would like to live with the current water quality situation.
What were the no's? It was 17. What did it end up at?
We ended up at 17 no's. They would not like to avoid the cost of treatment.
All right,
There were a couple of interesting combinations there. Some people said they're willing to pay, but they would prefer not to, and that sort of thing. But for the most part, it was yes, no, yes, as we were, expecting to see.
Brandy, sorry for it. So it's roughly 600 plus who said yes and 17 who said no. That's a
375 said yes, they were willing to live with it.
375 to 17.
Correct. 17 no's. 223 customers did not respond to the survey. But 60% of the 615 billed customers said that they would prefer to avoid the cost.
And I just want to say thank you to all of our customers for responding.
Yes.
We've talked about this a lot at HOA meetings tonight on the Fourth of July weekend. Appreciate all the HOA presidents and customers, spreading the word and the customers for responding. It's really important. Because we couldn't do any of it without people responding. So thank you for setting up and doing that.
Absolutely. Okay. And then lastly, just a couple of comments on the engineering report. Ashley is here to answer any questions that the public might have. But I wanted to point out a couple of things that were addressed in this engineering report that came out of our conversations with the community. One was, is there going to be a new building required, and does it have to be over at the well site? And Ashley's report here, there is going to be expansion required, but it can be done at the existing well 4-5 chemical building, which is over here off of Hawkweed. So it wouldn't be necessary to put it directly by the wellheads, which is different than some people's first impressions of things. Approximately the same cost. So there's that question that was answered. The question of, can we just blend all of our sources so that we bring the level down before we put it out into the system? We did not consider blending all of the sources because of the cost of a dedicated transmission line, but Ashley did look at whether it was feasible to blend just with well 3, which has a lower manganese level. This wasn't a recommended approach if you read through the report here, because we don't want to overtax well 3 in order to try to blend it and bring this into compliance. And also, we would have to dig a new line through the meadow. The construction would be considerable there. And then lastly, they did note in their report that there's an opportunity for us to look at our sampling procedures and make sure that we are doing everything we can to sample in a way that truly removes any doubt that this is a manganese water quality issue and that there is no sedimentation, nothing that could be wrong with our sampling procedures that might be causing the level to be slightly higher than it would be. So Ashley provided staff a specific list of sampling plan procedures that we're going to follow and update that going forward to see if that makes any difference and lowers our values. So with that, if there are any questions, Ashley's here to answer those. I'd be happy to answer also.
And just to be clear, comply with California code and comply with what was adopted by the board, you will now open it for public comment and then close it for public comment, and then the board can have the discussion. So the board's gonna have to wait so we comply with the state law on this one.
All right, so we'll open up for public comment now. If you have an interest in I see a hand up here, come up to the podium. We'll do the podium first, and then I see some hands online as well. So here first, go ahead.
Hi, Ellen Wilson, Bot 82. I just had a question if you could say a little more about the blending issue and how that would overtax well 3. I guess my understanding from your presentation back in July is that typically the water gets blended from different wells anyway. So just that sounds like a really interesting potential option, and just wanted to understand a little more about why that wouldn't work or why it couldn't be done in sort of a systematic intentional way. Thank you.
Yeah, so the wells cannot be blended as currently constructed. There used to be a true what's called the transmission line. So it would go from the well to the tank, and then from the tanks out to the people, to every customer. And it would blend in the tanks. Now we don't have a true transmission line. When some of the more recent wells were installed, they abandoned that and made it a common distribution and transmission. So the wells can go directly to someone's house. They can go to the tanks. It could come from the tanks to someone's house. It depends on where the demands are. So there is no opportunity to blend with our system as it exists today. I think Greg was next, or
I thought I saw both hands.
Oh, sure.
Go first, so
Go
why
for it.
don't you go next, go.
Yeah, Howard Hoffman, 34101 Yarrow. But I would like to thank the staff and the board for doing this and saving us a lot of money, and the community for doing what I don't know of any other vote in the history of Kirkwood, perhaps Peter does, where more than 95% of the voters agree on anything. So thank you.
You can go online, Greg McManus. You should be able to talk now. You can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
How come they didn't explore horizontal boring to go under the meadow instead of trenching? It's a viable way to get it to blend well 3 with 3 and 4. They just ignored it.
Do you want to invite Ashley to respond?
yeah, Ashley, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think we were looking at a couple of different things. So construction's one element, but also just looking at another reason that this was not a palatable option is because even blending with well 3 water quality, it still has a presence of manganese. It will bring it down into compliance, but if you're bringing it down even to like 80% of what the MCL is, there's still a possibility that will only last you so long. So it's a cost that at some point in time, if water quality got worse, would not be beneficial anymore.
Thank you, Ashley. Any other questions? Okay, I see a hand come up again.
Yeah, Ashley, isn't it the requirement for using wells 4 and 5 during high peak of usage? Because typically well 2 will be able to handle summer usage. So how does that work into it? Because you've not only got well 2 running, but well 3 and 4 if needed.
The question's not clear.
I'm sorry, Greg, this is Brandy. Are you asking if our state permit requires us to run a specific combination of wells at specific times of the year?
No, I'm just talking about from a usage standpoint. During the summer, it's fairly low usage. During the winter, the usage goes up quite a bit. So relying on wells 4 and 5 during the summer period of time doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. And so you would be in compliance not running those wells.
Certainly, but we would not want to constrain ourselves to not be able to run those wells. In the case that we need to do maintenance or there are other issues with the wells, one of which is shallower, as you know, we don't want to try to work ourselves into a situation where we are not able to run 4 or 5 whenever we need to.
Am I still on? Hopefully that will be a moot point after the study is done. The survey.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Do I have a motion to do that, or is that I can just close public? Okay. I'll close public comment and I'll open up the board discussion.
Can you just go through what are the next steps?
Sure. So per state law, the board, we've done almost everything. We have to provide a list of attendees to the state. We have to provide a transcript of this meeting, so we'll just provide them with an audio file of it. And then the board needs to accept and certify the survey results and the engineering report as presented. And Brandy did give the updated survey result numbers, so we will present those to the state because it closed at 12 and this packet went out last week. So obviously that's the only difference. So those are the next steps, and then we will wait on the state to see whether they approve it. To date, the state has not approved a manganese waiver anywhere in California.
Have there been other applications?
They don't know. None in the Sacramento jurisdiction or Stockton jurisdiction.
Brandy, can you just talk through a little bit of the sampling and testing and what's the timeline on knowing that? So we're going to start implementing what Ashley recommended to us. When will we get a sense of whether that's going to reduce the numbers in oil impact?
We will need a couple, so we will do the sampling procedure, the time lapse one that's on the very last page of the engineering report. We will go through that before our next quarterly samples, which is how we monitor for manganese at well 4-5 is quarterly. And then I would think we would need several quarters to see whether we are seeing any difference in impact there. We will be working with Ashley so that we can take a look at the initial results and see if it indicates that we should expect lower results. But when Ashley and I were discussing this, it is, I think we're both in concurrence that it's best to go ahead with the waiver. And then if we find several quarters in that we have lowered our levels to a point where this is no longer an issue, we can go back to the state and present them with this. But rather than delay the option to have the waiver, we should proceed with that.
And just in my experience, Doug, when you get an NOV, whether it's from the Regional Water Quality Control Board or the State Water Resources Control Board, it's about 2 years of demonstrated correction before they will let you go back. That being said, we have a 9-year waiver. There's no point to go back to the state, in my opinion. In 9 years, we could go back with hopefully lower levels, but there's no point in going back before then.
7.5 years or 8 years of
Data.
to show. And then just help me on the timeline from the response. So we're going to file this before the September deadline. Does the state have any timeline or guidelines to which they have to respond? Just so that we can start thinking.
They do not.
Okay.
When we initially started this, it took them about 2 months to give us the approved survey.
So we have sit and wait.
Correct. My guess is it'll be somewhere between, since they've never done this before, they're definitely going to be running this up through their bosses and their bosses' bosses. My guess is 2 months, best case, before you hear anything from them.
It sounds like this is mostly uncharted, like not a lot of experience in, at least in manganese, but is there any sense, any use to working through our local state assembly person, state senator, county commissioners, any sense to working the political system, or just?
If we don't get the 9-year waiver, you should probably start making some calls. But if we do, there's no point in wasting staff time or to do that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? I think I understand that we need to, the last two things that you had mentioned.
Correct.
To have a motion to have, which was the approval of the survey results and the
Certification of the survey results and approval of the engineering report.
motion.
Motion to certify the survey results and to approve the engineering report.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
See, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Good. Thank you so much, Brandy. Again,
Thank you, Ashley.
Amy, for responding and taking action on that notice that we gave you. So we really, really appreciate your help. Certainly keep you posted as we learn more from the state and probably end of this calendar year at Southfield. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 9B. I think this is page 58, Eric.
Yes.
So for this agenda item, there are a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that we brought forward to the community. In our last meeting in July, we obviously talked a little bit about wastewater and wastewater rates. We did a water master plan earlier this year. Some questions have come to me, and I know to members of the community coming forward posting information here. And I wanted to just make sure that we had a chance to talk about this, answer questions from the community. Certainly understand the numbers that we're asking for are an increase in water and wastewater rates. And I know the board, I can speak for everyone, we take those sorts of things seriously when we do that. And so I want to make sure that
Good morning, Midland Church, and welcome. So glad to be back with you today. And thanks for that consult. It's been much for the last week.
Sorry about that. So anyway, I just want to make sure that we had an opportunity to do a couple of things. One was we have some new information, which is that what we just talked about in item 9A, which is we have the opportunity to pass the waiver. We do not know if that will go forward, right? As we just talked about, the state has to approve it. We still might have to outlay the cost that was budgeted for this. So I wanted to make sure, Eric, I know we went back to our consultant here with him to talk about what those numbers could potentially be. And so maybe you'll talk about that. And so again, the board would then be able to have the option to not go as high as we put into the water wastewater rate study because of that potential offset cost. But I also just want to make sure that we have all the capital costs outlined in one board packet so that we can make sure the community can ask questions. Whatever we can't answer today easily, we'll take down as notes. And then when we have our hearing on September 5th is what we anticipate to have it as. We will have our consultant back for that meeting and then be able to answer further questions for that hearing at that point. So Eric, let me hand it to you about the rate, the manganese side of things, and the numbers that you got back from that.
So if we eliminate the well 4-5 project, which is the manganese project, the needed rate increase would be 12 followed by 4 10s versus 14s across for 5 years. So that is the difference.
It's a little bit lower. But there are still rate increases that we would be asking for
Correct.
in order to cover some of these capital costs. And so Eric, I think two of the questions that I got asked that I think are worth just noting to start with are all the capital expenses necessary? And are there any other less expensive options or anything else that staff considered that aren't in here?
Yes, they're necessary. No, we always go for the least cost option as a general rule. If we don't do the projects that are in the 5-year capital, we risk being in violation again. And if people like clean drinking water, we really need to go forward with those projects, particularly the tank, structural rehabilitation, and coatings.
Let me,
What's the lifespan on like the code?
Tank coating, generally about 20 years. Those are about 27 and 29 respectively.
Let me just say, from watching the videos, and we have videos of the diver looking at us, it doesn't look like something I would want to, in the near future, drink from. I mean, it's a serious thing that definitely needs to be fixed. And making it longer than what it already is has its own risk.
But it's also just a demonstration of like, well, why didn't we have to do that? Why didn't we have this caught 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Because we didn't have the divers 5 or 10 years ago.
Well, what I mean is it's got a 20-year lifespan. It's the end of the lifespan. You got to write a check.
Yeah.
Right.
So we did hire divers that was budgeted last capital year. And that's what revealed the dire situation of the respective tanks.
So you're saying that there is some kind of contamination in one of the tanks?
No.
No, I'm not saying, but the lining is old.
Yeah, the coating
Coating.
and the structural steel in the roof. Structural steel in the roof needs significant replacing and the coating is failing.
You're talking about the Chair 5?
I'm talking about both tanks.
Both tanks.
There's more structural in Dangberg than Lodge, if I recall correctly.
Because that's the newer of the two tanks.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
yeah. I mean, we got the videos if you want to look at them for sure.
I'd like to do public comment just like we've done the last one before we get into a lot of board discussion on it. So I want to make sure we have time for public comments because we can make sure we answer any questions that people have as much as we can today. Again, we will have a hearing officially on September 5th. So, but I want to make sure that people have all the information they have so that they can make informed decisions and protest or not according to their own decisions. But we want to make sure that you have the information you need.
Just for clarification, the hearing is something the one does for every rate increase.
Water, wastewater, it's official.
Just water, wastewater.
Officially for 218 purposes.
Anything that falls under the 218 threshold, which would also be our fire department.
Exactly.
well.
So that
And-
is our custom practice when we do these 218
Correct.
covered.
We comply with
always
218 always, where we are required to do so. Yep.
So let me open up to the public. Any questions for anyone in the room here? Seeing hands here. Go ahead on. Please.
Can you just share where in the packet, like on what page it outlines the information that you both just shared, the numbers, because all that
Sure.
I just want to be able to see.
Sure, no, that's a good question. So just to give you the background, because I've not seen you in a meeting before, so I'll just tell you. So I'll fill you in on kind of where we are. So the water master plan was presented by our consultant, Verdantis, which went through our EOP committee, as well as coming before the board, which recommended various capital improvements that we then added to our capital budget, which also went through committee and before the board. So that's where those two things were heard, and that's what feeds into the rate study is the capital, basically the capital plan. The operationals plan also went through committee and the board. And they also feed into it. But the capital is really what's driving capital and debt service ratios are really what's driving the rates. So on page
70.
Yeah, I can't. His hand's in my way. I'm gonna click that off. So on page 98, so page 98 is where you see the operational budgets, and 99 for both water and wastewater, and then following those, the next two pages after that, 100 and 101 are the capital budgets. So that's what feeds into the rate study. It's also, those are also regurgitated within the rate study themselves, but so it's in multiple places. But those are the easier ones to see of the two. So.
And I understand correctly from what you said, there is an increase to cover the capital improvements that are being recommended. And then there's an additional increase that is needed because we don't know if we're going to get the waiver. Is
Well,
that
there's still a capital expense. we
Right.
might have.
Yes.
We might avoid it.
so if we get the waiver, then
Then it's the 12, 10, 10, 10. that-
Yeah.
but are
So if you look at
we-
page 100, just to give you the exact, no. But we would wait and see what the waiver said.
Okay.
The board can always adopt a lower rate.
Okay.
But if you look on page 100, which is the relevant one, if you look at 2728, about the fifth line down, you see that 1.37 million. That's the manganese issue right there.
Okay, but our rates are not going to go up to cover that cost unless we need it to.
Correct. The board would have the option to adopt a lower rate than what was in the original study if we get the waiver and that project goes poof. Correct. Yeah, the board can always do that.
I see a hand up, Mike Musgrove. You should be allowed to talk now. You can unmute yourself.
Hey Doug, everybody. So thanks for explaining this. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person today. I just wanted to, I just ran around and found the letter that had been sent out to sort of review the proposed cost. And I mentioned this to you on email. You did reply back to me to say that the reason this material had been sent out in hard copy is to sort of adhere to the legal process. Just having heard what you said about the state of the tanks and the potential risk to drinking water, that's really good and basic information that I think the community wants to hear. Not everybody shows up for a board meeting. Not everybody's dedicated enough to do that. My kind of proposed suggestion is that kind of material, particularly if you've got videos and sort of material that shows the state of where things are, that would really help the community to understand why this project is important and why it needs to be done quickly and why there therefore needs to be an impact to ongoing rates. And I think that kind of material should be, rather than, my wife had taken this letter and stored it away in a file, I had to go and find it. I bet you a lot of people are in the same situation, looking at hard copy material. It would be great to put all that material online, a copy of the letter, a copy of the material that supports the kind of rationale behind the proposed increases so that people can take a decision on whether they want to make a comment back to you, and go to the trouble of putting a piece of paper together to send it back. But just making it easy for people to understand the reason behind it, I think would go a long way to people understanding why it's necessary to put the rates up.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Mark. We'll talk about that. One thing I'll build on just in terms of the paper copies, there were a couple of people who have noted that said they did not receive this. And following up with at least personally a couple of those people is because they didn't have their correct address. They didn't have an operating address that they actually check or have access to anymore registered with KMPD. And so I understand the staff has been following with those come back as return to senders. Those come back, we follow up with them to make sure that they can get them. But we're trying to make sure, one thing I noted just from all this process is that communication perspective, and always add in our newsletter to make sure that your information is updated with KMPD, some frequency just to make sure that something like this doesn't happen.
And the other thing I would say to Mr. Musgrove, the water master plan and wastewater and water rate study are on the website front page. So we've already did that months ago. So
The number one item.
it's right at the top.
And it's in that master plan, by the way, where I don't know if you click on videos, but you certainly can see photos.
There are
like
photos.
Bob is describing. You can see on page 80 the large tank interior roof. and in all the detail.
So I'll just say, go to kmp.com. It's literally the first 3 or 4 links. Literally on our home.
First two, yep.
First 2 on the website. So
But Mark, we totally agree with the sentiment though, and I'm really pleased that all that data is front and center right now.
all right, I don't see anyone else in the room. Let's go to Greg McManus again. Looks like you can unmute. You should be able to speak now.
Yeah, there we go. Having trouble with my mute button. I guess one of the things is all the information always goes to my wife. She pays the bills. And so I wasn't aware of any of the rate studies or anything until I got the letter. And I've been in private sector and done a lot of work for corporations and anyway, I just started reviewing through the costing that staff had provided the board with. And I feel there probably are a lot of really good cost savings in what has been presented to the board. And since the board is basing the rate studies off what the cost that staff have given them, I think there's a real opportunity to maybe really lean it up. And so that's why I want to, be able to offer my service and help with staff to look at cost cutting to really get that number down, so we aren't looking at these big rate increases for the next 5 years.
I appreciate that offer, Greg. Do you have one for you?
Sorry, too late.
I mean, from the perspective of cost, the water master plan, these are all costs that we have estimated and thoroughly looked at. Do you have any concerns, Eric, with?
No, these estimates have been reviewed by both me and Brandy as registered professional engineers, as well as our operational certified operators have reviewed this. We believe these numbers are correct. There's nothing to shave. They are pretty close, tight estimates. And if you look at our last 5-year budgets, we come in pretty close to what we budget, because that's what projects really cost these days.
Eric, maybe this would be an occasion to talk just a little bit about
We had another public, sorry.
this topic.
No, I was just, Doug said that, but I'm happy to answer, Chris, if Doug wants to.
Just to elaborate on this, so Hildebrand is the consultant that does the rate study. Did they also do the?
No.
Who was the engineer on?
You originally started with Peterson Brewstead, and which was acquired by Verdantis, which is
Right.
why we used Verdantis to do the manganese, because that was also part of the original water master
This just
plan.
might be an opportunity to say a word about the qualifications, the credentials, the value of the consultant that we've chosen, the experience we may have with them. I forget how many years we've worked with these consultants, how well they know our system, but isn't a lot of this built on recommendations from the consultant that?
Yes.
Exactly. So could you just speak to the?
Yeah, this firm, and since the acquisition, they're a much larger firm. Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, but they probably have 40 engineers in that, just in the Folsom office where Ashley is based out of. Personally, I've been working with Peterson Brewstead, which is now Verdantis, going on 20 years. Well-respected firm. They design lots of water treatment plants and backwash facilities and tanks and et cetera. In the time I've known them, their resume is extensive. It's a mid-sized firm, so probably somewhere between 500 and 1,000, a mid-sized engineering firm. So they have depth, and they are subject matter experts.
We've worked with them at PUD here
Yes.
for years, and it was a competitive process to choose.
Correct.
them, all of the.
We issued a request for proposal. We had multiple proposers. 4, Brandy, 3, and we selected Verdantis.
Thank you.
Let's go to our next public comment. Eric Raymond. You should be able to hear us. You should be able to speak now.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes, Eric, thanks.
All right. Hey, so I actually asked my questions through the Q&A feature. So if you want to see a summary, I have 3 of them that are slightly related. So first is, people have been mentioning that there's a protest mechanism, and I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about that and what it would effectively mean. If enough people did protest, do we have it? Does that basically mean we just go back to the drawing board and we're back in the same same position we are now? The other question has to do with how allocations of the rate increases are, you know, are handled, and if there are other options, or if that's just sort of prescribed, and that's not up for discussion. And then the other question comes down for these projects like the manganese, other stuff. Do we have a reserve for that, and are we likely to have projects like that or other things that, you know, require a future rate increase?
So let's go through this in order. The protest process, Eric.
Yeah, so the protest process is included in the letter. It has to be submitted in writing within 45 days of when we mailed them. And have to receive, you have to include your name, your address, or account number, or both if you wish, and a protest. Bear in mind, there are both water and wastewater rates in there, so you can protest one and not the other, protest both, or whatever. And then if 50% plus one no votes come back, then the 218 fails. What was the third question?
What does that effectively mean if it fails? I mean, it doesn't sound. I mean, I'm curious. What's the practical options? You know,
we're prohibited from increasing the rates as included in the rate study. That's what that means. And so that means that we won't have money to do these projects, and we will probably get more notices of violation like we did for manganese, only more severe.
Okay, so certain service levels will also be affected as well, or is it just mostly compliance?
I don't know if service levels would be affected, but quality would be affected.
Okay.
Water quality, yeah.
And there are two other questions.
Yeah, so and as to the rate methodology, that was prepared by a assessment engineer. We went through that for a couple meetings, quite a few meetings. And that was his recommendation of the methodology, which was adopted by the board. Are there other methodologies that could have been used? Yes, but he used the most common industry standard in California.
That's pretty close to what we already do.
And that's what
very minor change.
Very similar to what we are doing right now. Yeah, it was not a lot of changes.
The protests were mailed on July 18th.
Correct.
That's the letters.
The letters, rather.
Yes, you're correct.
And do those common allocations consider the fact that we have lots of part-time, we have this weird skew of demographics and people that are residents full-time versus not, and different water users, and plus a large, I guess,
I would encourage you to read the rate study. That's all in there.
Okay, I didn't see that. Thank you.
The short answer is no, all residential is essentially treated the same.
And the full engineer's report is in this board packet.
And the prior board packet. And the finance committee packet, and the prior finance committee packet.
And so, yeah, it goes through a lot of this, and also again, capital expenses.
Right. But we also have a large base rate, which I'm not sure is fairly common out there, right?
It's quite common after the drought years. Most water agencies have switched to that, so it's quite common.
It's common in water.
And it's not, just to be clear, it's not just that we're doing that; it's that it reflects our costs.
Our fixed cost versus
variable. We're not just moving it to be collecting fixed revenue. It's actually, well, I think it was like 60 something. It was like,
we've changed nothing in the last, this is no different than what's been happening for the last 5 years.
I just want to be very clear that we're not, the fixed costs cover fixed costs.
Correct.
And variable costs are intended to cover variable costs. So.
That's been the standard. Correct.
And then I think you had a last question here, Eric, that was about the longer term projects and reserves and how we're budgeting for reserves.
Currently, I believe water has approximately 200,000 in reserves. Those are included in the analysis by the rate consultant.
I think there's a target reserves that we have for operating and capital.
Correct.
As well, studies.
Correct.
Okay, Eric, any other questions?
Well, I mean, maybe we're...
Was there a question?
Lost.
I haven't done anything.
Okay. Eric, come back and okay. Any other questions, comments, questions from the board? I don't see any questions.
I just one thing that really impressed me. Can you bring up page 39?
In the packet overall?
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
So the bars here show capital spending going back for the last 5 years. And you notice the bars are barely visible for the last 5 years, and then they move up. I would say if there's something to be learned from this, is having a more even approach to capital, but that didn't happen, and we're now playing catch up in a certain sense. So that really impressed upon me the fact that if we don't have quality water, the services we provide are essential, making things work, and we don't want to take any risks on the quality level or the reliability of it. And we're in really good shape with electricity. We're getting there with propane. There's some improvements that we're doing to deal with winter. And the wastewater has been totally rehabilitated. And so that's nearly complete. So water is kind of the remaining utility for which I could say that we're behind, or I'd say we want to make sure that we don't fall behind. One of those two statements is true. I don't really know which it is. So that's really, so I just feel this chart really provides a lot of information. And of course, that big bar, the first big green bar is the manganese. So that would go back to being a small bar if the state gives us a waiver.
Bob, is that because we didn't do a master plan process? We spoke clear about the divers that weren't here until recently. Why is it that for those 5 years
There's a couple reasons for that. One, we dive the tanks every 5 years, and the prior dive was fine. We had some life left in it. The most recent dive was not fine. So that necessitated the second big green bar. The first big green bar was the manganese. We had to deal with manganese, which was not on our radar as an issue because it hadn't been an issue. We were hovering below it and thought we were going to stay below it, and we are not. So that's why that came up. Most of our focus has been on wastewater, quite frankly, as our primary, between the plant and the I&I issues. That's where our focus has been. Our system was installed starting in the 70s. It generally has a useful life of about 50 years, 40 years, depending on the type of pipe. We're getting to the end of the useful life of our system. We need to start making all of our systems, quite frankly.
you were thinking water?
Water and wastewater are at the end of the useful life. Electric, less so in terms of transmission, but maybe not distribution, and propane somewhere in the middle. Probably the best of the four. Once we do the upcoming capital improvements on that, which are in the rate study we just adopted for propane.
Bob, to your comment about wastewater, we brought the plant with our $7 million investment. We've made a major upgrade, but the document also points out that significant rehab. We have a $4 or $5 million capex plan. This time they'll all funded from cash and operations, not from debt. So there's still a lot of work to do in wastewater. Isn't that fair to say?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, we have the lifts that were, those are the big.
There's definitely, but we have more reserves in wastewater, especially with the wastewater treatment plant coming in under budget and ahead of schedule. We're a little bit better in terms of our reserves there, to the tune of about $500,000. So we're going to be able to cash flow most of the wastewater projects without incurring new debt, which is.
Yeah, and I think that was the third question that was asked earlier, is what's the state of our reserves? So part of what we have to do with this increase is build up reserves in water. So if we have a problem, we can respond.
Right.
And there's a nice chart that has all of the lines of where that reserve looks like versus our target and how this is jumping up immediately. It's getting us there over, I think that was about 10 years almost.
It's 10 years horizon. It is a 10-year horizon. That's correct.
So I mean, it's not like we're trying to get everything at the first bite as well. And we're trying to get there sensibly over a 10-year horizon, given what we have. Okay. I don't see any other public comments. I don't think we're any other questions. We okay to move on?
Yeah, this will all be covered.
Yeah, we will. This
next meeting.
September 5th is the planned date. Up. I see one more hand come up. Is everyone okay if I take that one more?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yes. So again, these were in the Q&A section, so you can look at that. So the one question has to do with, you mentioned that there was something that was going to be improvement for the propane. So if you does that affect what happens when we don't get deliveries? And then the other question is, I've heard that there are challenges if electrical use increases, as we might expect, based as Valley shifts away from propane and as we get more electrical vehicles coming into the Valley. Are those covered in these rate increases?
This is water stands on its own, wastewater stands on its own, has nothing to do with propane or electric, except for what we charge ourselves in terms of utilities. So we have a pretty high electric bill at the wastewater plant. It's our most intensive use in the valley, even more so than Vail.
Right. Okay. So the meeting
Answer the
is
question.
focused on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have room for a lot of it. The electric system, the transmission system was designed to handle the total build out, so we're fine.
But the local system where.
But we're on water, wastewater, if we're not talking about those other two, just to keep you Brown Act compliant.
Feel free to email myself or info@KMPD and we'll get those questions in to round down at the top. Okay. I think we'll move on. Okay. Like I said, thank you again for your people's interest in water, wastewater. You know, it's an important topic and obviously asking for more money from our community. We don't take it lightly, but we want to make sure that you can show up and have water that tastes right and flows and you can flush your toilets and you don't have to think about what happens if that happens, you know, flush it incorrectly and something bad happens. We don't want that to happen here. So come prepared for September 5th rate hearing and we'll talk about it more then. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 9.
The rate hearing will be in the board meeting. Is that the same thing? Or is this
No,
It will be prior, it will be at 1 o'clock.
separate. It's technically a separate.
the same venue?
Same venue.
Same venue, same Zoom link, separate meeting. By law, we have to do that.
All right, so 9C is Alpine County Fire Proposal and Property Tax Allocations. Chief Ansel, you want to come up and talk about that? I'll let you start.
In the board packet on page 77, the background here is the fire.
108.
Sorry. Cool. As you know, there's been the board as well as the Board of Supervisors for Alpine County created a temporary advisory committee to basically try to update a cost proposal to provide contract fire service for the KMPUD. We've had several meetings and we continue to discuss, you know, what that might look like, what those prices might look like. And in the board packet, you'll see some of the latest proposals as well as some of the associated overtime costs. But additionally, the board recently decided to no longer allocate property taxes to water and wastewater in the current rate study, as you know. And in the most recent adopted operational budget, the board increased the fire property tax allocation from $200,000 to $350,000. And then the other departments would share a portion of the property tax. And historically, the electric department, we reserved $450,000 in property taxes, but we've seen over the last several years that the need for electric is only $200,000. So considerations for new allocations of property taxes should include potential overages with Alpine County over the 218 assessment amount, meaning that if we come up with a number, we go to a 218 for that number for fire. If we miss it, you know, and there's overages, we would probably use property taxes to cover the overages with the contract price. And then also there'll be a need still for the fire department to basically replace existing fire equipment, which isn't part of the Alpine County proposal. And as you know, fire has no other source of income other than property tax. So the potential future need for property taxes for electric, employee housing, and parks and above are above the current amount budgeted. So really, the requested actions are, as you can see in the staff report, one, the board determined how much, if any, additional property taxes should be allocated to fire, which would then in turn reduce the amount needed in the 218 assessment. And our staff recommendation is increasing the tax allocation for fire to $480,000, which would leave $200,000 in reserved property taxes for contingencies that might arise. Second thing I'll need is that the board direct Francisco and Associates, who are engineers who created the report for us, to update the cost in that report to reflect the actual Alpine County proposal costs, and once we come up with them, plus the district's current costs. minus the modified tax allocations that are set. And then finally, that the board concur with the G&A allocation for fire be reduced from 8.3% to 2.3%, with the balance spread across the remaining funds. And this would, of course, only happen after an MOU was executed with Alpine County. So essentially, that's my report unless there's any questions, but basically I'm looking for direction on those three requested action items. And Doug, I'm sure you'd like to add about the TIPR advisory committee and discussions as well.
Sure, yeah. So, John and I, as authorized by the board, have been talking to Alpine County, the Board of Supervisors, the PEMBA Advisory Committee. I'm also speaking to Kirkwood Mountain Resort, who's been in the loop on the conversation. I think the way I presented this to HOA meetings, if anyone was there, was this is X plus Y minus Z. And that result or that formula is what we would go out to the community with as the 218 number. And so that's what we've been negotiating with Alpine County on the 218, for the X, which is on page 109. The next page is the budget. And so the number that you're seeing there is a 597. And so you can just call it $600,000 after some conversations. The next page after that, the OT of the 13,000 is what they updated the budget to include, given that if we want 24/7, 365 service, we would need to have OT so that someone can go on vacation and have someone come fill that time. That's what the OT numbers come from. And then the plus Y is that the number there of what we would need to do of the $190,000 of what we would add in as our cost to then operate. So that's the X plus Y, and then the Z is what staff is recommending is $408,000 that we would subtract from that total to get down to the kind of 600,000 plus 200,000 minus 480, 500,000. But that number is the result of what we would go out with 218. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Eric, John, do you have anything that you want to add on to this in terms of conversations or anything?
No, I hope everybody's kind of read the history that, we've talked to everyone we could to see what other options are available. So we've been to Amador County, Lake Valley, which is El Dorado County. Both of them came in requiring a minimum of 3 people full-time at a cost of around 1.8 to 2.4 million for their cost, plus that would still include the 200,000 of the cost of the PUD be providing. That's mostly for the fire station and the apparatus downstairs, utilities, things like that. So Alpine County is the only one that's come back to say they would be willing to staff 1 full-time. I think it's important that they would be able to be successful at staffing volunteers, because we need more people to answer a call than one. So that's another, I think, strong criteria that we gotta make sure that we have a vibrant volunteer program here to augment the 1 full-time pay. I do like that the property tax is being assigned to fire. It's a more traditional use of property taxes. Most counties use the majority of property tax for fire, emergency services, and schooling. That wasn't needed in Kirkwood, when the PUD was formed. Now it is. So I think it's a appropriate shift of use of that resource. So those are the only comments I have. I want to make sure everyone knows we've kind of beaten every bush out there. We've talked to CAL FIRE, and we still keep looking. I know I'm right now looking at some private fire services that provide services to individuals and insurance companies in that. But I don't think we're going to find anything that's going to be more economical. And I think this is also a good opportunity for Alpine County too, as far as put some additional revenue in Alpine County to fight fires and do emergency medical services. So I think it's a win-win for Alpine as well.
Do you want to talk about the staffing with the volunteers and plan at this point? Budget right now, I think it's still in yellow. I'm here, 55,000. That could service, certainly 1 volunteer, but certain times we could have 2 volunteers. As Chief Washington would need to decide at that point, if we went through. So, you want to talk about how that can play out, like your conversations with the chief and
Sure.
that?
So again, this would be turning a volunteer department into a combination department. And we know, or we would like to see at least one full-time paid person here 24/7. The stipend volunteers, clearly in the budget that's presented, it has $55,000 set aside for stipend volunteers. That's, if you look at our operational budget, that covers essentially one volunteer at our existing stipend paid level. But this is going to be up to Chief Worsham and Alpine County if they're comfortable with that. If they think they want to add a little more to that, 25,000 more just to try to get more volunteer support, especially during the busy winter season when the call volume is up. We could certainly try to work with them, but ultimately it's what Paul Worsham's comfortable doing. The bare minimum, I think, should be 2, but the more that we have, obviously, the better response, better type of care we can provide. But these are, again, just some small details that we'll work out with the chief. But the chief and I have talked about it, and he's okay with paid person and one stipend volunteer. But as we continue our discussions with Alpine County, that could change. But that's sort of the model I have now, which is 2 volunteers. But for most calls, I'll have at least 3, sometimes 4 that show up. But as you know, there are times where nobody shows up and it's just me. So that's what we're trying to solve here.
And then in terms of, the one thing I just want to highlight too is that of the property taxes, of the recommendation, to clarify, at least if I'm speaking correctly, of course, is that the recommendation is for 480,000, but there's 200,000 that would be left contingent. That does not mean that we could not allocate it to this in a given year, right? Because if we didn't have an expense that we wanted to add in that safety area, if you would, we could authorize less than the amount that we went out to the vote for in 218 and then we'll go to a smaller number using maybe some of those dollars. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, sorry. You're proposing that some years we would just lower the fee?
I'm saying that if you had a reserve of 200, like what staff is proposing, I want to understand the staff proposal, right? Because $480,000 is not every allocated property tax dollar that doesn't already go to electric or log rock housing or whatever. There's $200,000 that could be budgeted for, another expense, like, buying another engine, large capital expenses. What I'm saying is, if it were available and we decided the board could use some of that dollars to then administer a lower fee in a given period. Is that correct?
It might be technically correct. I don't think it's good policy.
You could, but I don't know what that would do to you the subsequent year because you're only allowed to go up by CPI. So if you artificially lower it, you may have hamstrung yourself for another year.
Oh, because you can only get by CPI what you just
Correct.
It's not CPI what we've authorized.
I don't believe so. I
don't think you would ever want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna have. I mean, if you recall, our last fire engine was $1 million. 5 years, we might save up enough if we don't need it elsewhere in the district to buy a fire engine. Just to give you the magnitude. It's not. It's not this giant rainy day fund.
I understand that. I was under the impression the CPI was applied to the authorized amount, not the.
That'd be a question for district council. So I went to law school, but I'm not a bond counsel.
So X plus Y minus Z. You didn't bother to say what the actual result is.
Well, I mean,
to me, is it 300?
It's about
$320,000.
Well, it is around if you follow the recommendation from the staff recommendation, you could say more than this, or we could say.
I just want to know what it is. It's 320,000.
That's what it is currently from the numbers that we have right now. So.
All right. And our current fee is 60,000 a year.
That's correct.
Okay.
You're looking at that, right? 68.
Yeah, that included the other.
Yeah.
So yes, we've got 5x increase from that perspective.
30 years later.
30 years later, because that is not adjusted over time.
It hasn't been
adjusted for CPI.
It's probably less than inflation.
Might be if it had been inflated, adjusted. That's correct. So the question at this point is, what? Because at this point we can say, let's we're assuming that the 597, which is our best number that we received from Alpine County at this point. We're working with them on it. We're having conversations, formalize it. There's the stipends, which as Rick just described, covers one full-time person. We could have more going into that, so we could, increase the budget from 597 a little bit if we wanted to budget for more, or we could. It's kind of like there's still some variables that are in play, but I think our point of where we are right now is that we can go out to the community and say to them in the survey, would you be willing to pay, 320,000 as the number multiplied by your component and would you send a survey out with that now and see what people would say. So
I'm pretty comfortable with the numbers and arriving at the 320,000 that you did on back of the envelope. And I think it's important not to draw a conclusion that 55,000 in stipends means only one person.
Right.
Mathematically, it would be one person 24/7, 365, but
right.
Like what Rick said, there could be more flexibility in that. There's also the practicality of, we've had a hard time filling the volunteer positions, right? So 55 seems like a pretty good estimate for this.
That's what I mean.
For this tax.
That's what I mean. Is that, and then, it gives us to where we are now, and then can always get the information and go from there. So that's the question at this point is, we have a number that it's around $320,000. It's the exact number in, but the question is the board comfortable with the staff recommendation here, the 480,000 of the Z of, the X is the best number that we have from Alpine County right now. The Y staff has given us in the board packet as the 190. The Z is recommended at 480. And if you take those numbers, you're to 320, and we want to send a survey to our customers in August, which the text of which was in the last board packet. Which was made some slight modifications based off feedback that I worked with staff on. We can send that out in August and get information so that in September 5th board meeting, we would have a good idea.
What do you mean by a survey is really, it's almost like a mock.
It's a mock ballot.
It's a mock ballot.
QAT.
We're gonna have the engineering firm take the $320,000, apply the apportionment, and then be able to post to each
every
entity. What their actual bills, and you get a feedback from them on whether they support that or not, along with a description of the service provided.
That's correct. And so I think the hopefully this will be a simpler survey than the manganese, and that it would be one question. And it will say, outlining this is what your cost
Instead of down from 3.
Down from 3.
Yeah, wow.
In weird order. It'll be just look, here's
Statutory order.
So here's, but again, look at the way that the draft of it is, that we worked on. Again, you all saw the last board meeting, essentially this. This is what we're doing. Here is what you pay today. We're asking for this increased level of service to pay this amount. Are you willing to pay this amount for this increased level of service? Yes or no?
I support it. I'll have it make a motion if you want, but can I first ask John, you and Doug, have you spoken with interested parties like KMR, Vail? Any color that you can share from the response of Vail, especially given their heavy share of the vote?
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of people that are on this call. So, Ricky, if you would like to raise your hand and join, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I can just say that I appreciate that we've had really good conversations with them. Always receptive to have the call. And I think I feel like there's general support of what we're trying to do in general. But I think Ricky.
Yeah, I couldn't see he was on the call. Thank you. That'd be great.
Ricky has told us that he's still thinking about, how he's running the operations and everything. So, I don't have a definitive answer, but I really appreciate the conversations we've had and the support that he's given us. He gave the introduction to Lake Valley for us. So I think he's been a very active and supportive partner through all of this. But Ricky, is there anything else you want to add to that? You're welcome to. Otherwise, we can leave it here. Okay, I don't see his hand going up. So, any other questions on this? Right.
It's just a comment, because this has been about an 8-year process, as near as I can tell. So everything has been explored, and there's a couple of things we know. One thing we know, and it's not just us, it's everywhere in California, volunteer fire departments can't provide full coverage. And it's just a decline. And there's an interesting article about Yolo County and the fact that they're even harder to do. We're doing better than they are. So we know that we can't currently provide service. That if you're going to have an emergency, we better time it properly. Or we can't respond, and that's a bad place to be. We also, so we know that fact that what we currently have can't continue, doesn't work, and has stopped working several years ago, despite our best efforts. The second thing we know from Measure E is that the community does not believe they can afford a full-time fire department with 3 full-time people 24/7. And there's probably never been a ballot measure that did worse in California than that. So we know that for a fact. So we're now saying, what is the most cost-effective way of making sure there's always at least one qualified staff, EMT, firefighter here, and then the rest is covered by by volunteers. We've taken all the property taxes we can, where there was an option to use it or not, made all those adjustments. So we're now at the point where we know we have a viable plan that would cost $320,000 additional spread out through the community, or we shut down.
Bob, I'd like to push back briefly if I could. Prop 108 failed with only 13.27 yes votes.
I'm relieved.
All right. First time I've used AI was to get that answer for you, Bob.
That's great. So that's the second place.
I didn't see who second place was. I only asked the worst, Bob. That's 3 times as bad as what Measure E did. So
Right, and then in the letter, in the survey letter, we do make clear that, voting no to this means that you're in favor of us divesting our services here and having the calls come in from Amarillo or Alpine County when the roads are open. So that has been in the letter. We made that very clear. To Bob's point, and I want to make sure the community does understand that. We've said that a lot of times, but we'll say that as clear as we can. Okay. I would say, I'd like a motion then to move forward on these 3 items that are in here. And then I think there's a 4th that isn't really explicit, but is to authorize you all to send the survey out.
that was approved previously by the board, so it's all good.
So you're all right. So the 3 items in here are the 3 items we need a board motion for.
Is the survey mail and email or just in?
I think we'll mail it to the people that don't have email registered with KMPD, like we do with the biannual customer survey.
We're gonna do one per
One per account.
cost per parcel number.
We should.
One per parcel, correct.
Which would mirror.
Or sub parcel, yes. That mirrors the 218. That is correct. It's a per parcel vote, so yes, it's per parcel.
Developed parcel or?
Doesn't matter, it's per parcel.
I'll move that we adopt and move forward on the 3 steps. Do you want me to read it? Or do you-
Nope, I think the same 3 as listed in the board packet.
As listed in the board packet.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. All right, well, thank you. Again, I'll say thank you to the Alpine County and teams there, staff, especially for all the work done here, and certainly to our volunteer firefighters, who I see some of them listening onto this call today. Thanks for the service to everyone here. Thanks.
Yeah, it's good. One comment that we didn't really clarify item 3, although we just voted for it anyway. The decrease in G&A isn't arbitrary. We are picking up, Alpine County be picking up quite a bit of the administrative work.
Right. No, we went through the
There's a
G&A.
reason for that large change.
No, we went actually through the budget, the sheets behind the sheets in the budget for that, and it moved labor around. But we couldn't get rid of our building maintenance, utilities, all that, the insurance, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, we went through the whole budget page by page on that.
All right. Well, thank you again to everyone involved in this process, Ricky and everyone, for Mountain Resort, Alpine County, staff, the official well. Move on to 9D, finances. Page 1.
Mariana, look at that. Terry's out on vacation, so I hope she's having a good time and not thinking about us. I'll just start with any questions on the budget variances. This was reviewed by finance, and it was a pretty uneventful 20-minute discussion. Then we closed the meeting and talked for another 40.
Pretty much we're a little better, but we're a little better than budget, and better than cash in our cash position. Balance sheets on track. The anomalies are all described in this budget variances overview. So I think that's worked really well over the last few years, instead of having everyone have to ask the same question because you don't remember the answer from last month. Now we have it memorialized. So yeah, not a lot of issues came out of the finance committee meeting.
Any questions from the public? Any questions from the board?
Okay, the consolidated balance sheet, as John said, we're a little bit better positioned. Obviously, we put more money in reserves, which is why revenue is looking lower, but so our operating is lower. That's why the variance is there, because we have more in reserves and we've been earning interest on that. So we talked about that. That's on the sheet, but any questions on the balance? Good.
Question for the public? The board? No? Go on, please.
Any questions on any of the individual funds?
Nothing in the public, the board? Okay.
Okay. July preliminary income, again, we're tracking okay, a little bit low. But overall for the year, we're above budget. And one question that John's, and I think Frank maybe brought up a couple times and maybe just bears repeating. We have one last COVID year in here in the 5-year average. And so what you're seeing in terms of usage, the variance in usage, why is residential ostensibly down in usage and commercials up that's basically all comes back to COVID. We had all the people from residential come in, and we went from 60 people to 600 people living in Valley. That changed the usage. It's still ticking on the budget, and then they'll shut down for a season and a half, which lowered their usage, which now they're higher than budget because we still have that 1 year of low usage. So it's a refrain that we will see this current fiscal year, and then it will go away. So, but that's something that comes up a lot. So I thought I'd mention that. John, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I know we could have said do something other than a 5-year average, but on the other hand, we didn't know what the new normal was after the COVID year. Like, is it going to continue like this or not? So I think it was the right action, but we did think residential and commercial would float together, and they don't because of that reason.
Yeah. And then cash flow, we're definitely better. Standish pointed this out at finance, but we used to panic a little bit in December when we get below $1 million. We haven't done that since we stabilized the electric base rates, and so you can see the December, while it still is our lowest month, we're not hitting 2 million was the comfort level of the board previously, and we are not getting below that any longer. So we haven't been for about 2 years now. So just shows we're in better position, meeting our reserve targets for both capital and operating. All right.
Oh, good.
All right, I don't see any questions from the public, any board questions, otherwise we move on to this agenda. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 9E, reporting on aquifer levels. Bring Brandy back. I want to say, first of all, thank you for coming to the chart for that.
Absolutely. And if it's all right with everybody, we can just skip to the third page here, which is the 5-year comparison. Since we're at the end of the fiscal year here, these are really the numbers that we want to look at. And we can go just department by department. If you look at electric, that's in red. These are the USA DIG colors, by the way. It's pretty steady across the board. We see a little bit of up and down, but it's been fairly steady over the last 5 years. We were at 11% year end this year. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, I am going to rework the performance reporting monthlies so that our electric department better matches the master plan expected losses. So you'll see a difference in next month's also. Taking a look at propane, which is in yellow, you can see our oscillation around the 0 line there. We had -1 this year. The lowest number we ever saw was -5 back in 2022. These numbers are attributed to differences in when we get deliveries. Warmer temperatures causes expansion of propane. And we do see temperature and pressure affecting that, but it is, again, relatively stable around the 0 number. Water is the one that this year we probably see, it's in blue, we see the impact of the water main break that we experienced towards the end of winter. We do have an 18% loss in water this year, which is a little higher than we've seen in years past. I think this is, as Eric said, as our system gets to the end of its useful life, these sorts of things are going to happen. And as much as we can do maintenance to prevent those, the better off we are. And then lastly, green is wastewater. And you can see that there is a bit of variation in wastewater. So wastewater, there isn't actually a loss here. This is extra water that gets into our collection system that then gets treated at our wastewater plant. So we have done over the past few years some work to try to mitigate water getting into the system. We've done manhole repairs. We've done the Wintergreen Sewer project last year. But these are also dependent on how much snow there was. How much snow is on the mountain means how much I we get coming down the hill and into our system.
So a couple things. When you say that though, like as we shore up our system, I would hope that the variance of I should be less dependent on snowpack because we've hardened our systems. So if they're weak, yes, more water gets in. If it's big, there's a little bit that we harden our system. I would hope that that would become less relevant. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
I agree with that. It is going to take some time though, because some of the hardening that we need to do is, individual sewer lines to houses that have cracks because trees are growing up around them. And are we ever going to be at a place where we've replaced every sewer lateral? Probably not. But yes, it is a sound idea that the more we repair, the more we tighten up the system, the less water gets in. But I industry-wide is something that is expected, and I believe they say somewhere around 8%.
If for new tight systems and new subdivisions, that's like brand new systems.
Is it 8?
8.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So we're never going to get down to.
I'm not asking for 0.
Okay,
Just
all
to be clear.
right. Just want to set our expectations
The reason
here.
I wanted to ask for this chart was that I want to be, we are spending money on this.
Mhm.
We are investing in what we just talked about earlier today. We are spending money to hopefully reduce the cost of processing snow. And so I just want to make sure that we all are listening to ourselves and hearing ourselves and saying that hopefully that slightly independent of snow melt, we should see that green bar continue to go down, not to 0, but we should hopefully see that go down over time. That's kind of my point.
You should see it go down. You should see less variability.
Mhm.
That's my point.
Yes.
I have just 2 other thoughts really quickly. One is I think it would be helpful if we could switch the axes so that it would match time going from left to right, just like on our other charts, because I got messed up on that.
Sorry.
And 2, I think just like you do on 3 pages later, 4 pages later, maybe on the water chart, just because when we look at this chart in multiple years from now, we're going to forget that there's a water main break here. And it can be helpful just to put that and memorialize that on this chart. So that way we know when, now we're not like, oh, wow, water went up 3 years ago. Why was that? We can just have it memorialized in this document.
I think we should make it a pie chart just for Doug.
Oh, please don't be.
3D pie chart, yeah.
That's one of them.
He loves
Yeah.
The more you ask, the more I want to do pie charts.
That would be great, yeah.
All right.
Snowfall years that come.
Okay, any other
It's
questions?
good to have this.
I just think thank you, Brandon, for putting this together. I think it's really helpful to have, especially in the last 2 years. Any other questions on that's been public? Okay, I don't think I see any hands up. Okay, all right, well, thank you, Brandy. Let's move on to the next agenda item, 9F, which is the resolution 25-04, annual wildfire mitigation plan. So Brandy, that's still you.
It is. So this is something that the board has seen for multiple years now. It is a minor update to our wildfire mitigation plan. On page There, on page 21, our performance metrics now include actuals for 2024, forecast for 2025. There's,
No,
No,
I'm sorry, it's,
38.
Yeah, 138.
sorry about that. It's 21 of the plan itself. And then there was also an org chart update. So with the board's approval, we will adopt this plan. We are required to submit it to the California Wildfire Safety Advisory Board. It's just one of the annual things that we're required to do for our electric industry.
and we did have it independently reviewed by Amador Fire Protection District at no charge to the district. So I'd like to thank AFPD and Chief Withrow for doing that for us.
Just a quick time out, because I'm not told me that, I was gonna say the same thing, so thank you, Chief Whitman. Any questions on this? Okay, then I think we would accept, or, say public question, no public questions, I accept the motion to accept the, wildfire.
To adopt resolution 2504.
Resolution 2504. So move. So second. Second, 5 seconds, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move on to 9G, which is resolution 2505. Cancel.
As the board is aware, we are purchasing some additional employee housing for our family staff per se. And so in the process of doing that, we're going to be looking at a loan from Five Star Bank. It's tax exempt borrowing from Five Star Bank. And again, we're going to be using, and this is in the staff report, we'll be using net revenue from the district's water, wastewater, propane, and electric enterprises to for the basis of this loan. Five Star Bank's counsel, Kurtak Rock LLP, has created an installment purchase agreement, which is also in the board packet. And so the resolution essentially is asking the board to approve the loan in the amount of $460,000 at the interest rate of 5.17%. And the resolution for the board of directors is for the directors authorizing the execution and delivery by the district of an installment purchase contract and authorizing the execution of other necessary documents and related action. And those other necessary documents can be found within the board packet. Again, it's Exhibit C, which is form of acquisition for funded requisition, where the general manager will be signing that. The actual installment purchase contract I will sign, and then of course the board will have to sign the resolution with the clerk. And I could read through the installment purchase contract descriptions, or if you have any questions, try to answer them. But essentially, I'm looking for approval for the resolution. And know that we are looking to close this loan on 4/18, Monday.
August 8/18.
8/18, I'm sorry, 8/18. That week, 8/18, 8/19.
Yeah,
And that
and finance didn't have this in the last committee that.
No.
So this is totally unread.
But it is one thing I think we said in the past, and just to clarify, it's 10 amortized over 25, not over 30.
Yeah.
25, 300,
10-year fixed
300 months.
with an amortization schedule. And that's because entities like us aren't eligible for consumer loans. So it is a very good interest rate though, and it is tax exempt as well.
And we have secured that rate as well.
It's a lower rate than the public rates that we looked at.
Yeah, it's a lower rate, but I know when if you went to bank rate and looked up things, you can't get a 30/30 for an organization like ours. So we thought 10 fixed on a 30-year amortization increase monthly payment contained and gives us no variability for the first 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yep. All right, any questions from the public? See any? Questions from the board? Discussion. That's resolution 25-05. Motion. Entertain motion.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just work on that.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Sarah Zulin with Sierra Gold Realty, who's been helping us basically get through the documents and so forth, as well as Reagan and Eric with Five Star Bank have been great. So appreciate your support and help.
All right, we move on to 9F, which is kind of a corollary, or sorry, 9H.
9H.
That is a corollary to 9B in some ways. So this is about a housing handbook for property that would have employee and associated. Eric, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So personnel looked at this, staff drafted this, personnel looked at it and massaged it a bit. And then we ran it through district council because there's a lot of legal questions about Fair Housing Act and all those sorts of things. So this has gone through district council with their changes that were recommended or required. And happy to answer any specific questions.
Any questions from the public to start? I don't see any. The board have any questions?
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, the issues that came up was the criteria for being able to apply and make use of the property. There's other questions that came up were around tax liabilities. If we provide housing at less than market rates to an employee, is that taxable? So
Taxable to them.
correct.
Yeah.
So Eric, that got resolved.
Yeah. That one specific question, it seems likely, and I'm quoting, it seems like that if the board has legal justification for charging below market, then there are unlikely to be any tax consequences. Yeah. That was what Josh said. So, and it's having people close and not, 45 minutes away when there's an emergency. Really, that's the justification.
That's our tax consequence. But what about the person receiving the benefit?
He said, like, that was the answer to both of them. Was there any tax implications either way?
The wordings of jeez.
The other aspect of this was just the cost of the rental, which we should recommend at $2,000 a month,
Correct.
plus utilities and HOA fees. That would be liable to the rental.
No, 2,000 a month plus utilities. HOA fees are included in that 2,000 a month.
This my only question is if we don't have a family that needs it, would we temporarily?
That's
provide
in
a-
one of our recommendations. So at the very end, Bob, if no qualified applicants wish to utilize it, district, we recommend, this is staff's recommendation. This came up outside of personnel. So personnel hasn't heard this, but this came up from Josh. That we retain a property manager to fully realize rental income, e.g. ski lease, Airbnb, VRBO, until a qualified employee applicant is available. So
it would
we
only
would
be
basically for family, and if we don't have anyone in there, we would rent it out at, what do those go for? 10,000 a month roughly, in the winter season. So that was a new one.
Do you need a motion to?
Yes, because we will incorporate this into the, not the employee handbook, but into the employee housing handbook.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, that one, the employee housing handbook hasn't been before the board since 2012. It's that old. We need to probably revisit that, look into that. But
All right, any other questions, comments on the family housing? Okay, I'll accept the motion to approve as written.
Motion to approve as written.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, opposed. That closes out agenda item 9. We'll move on to agenda item 10, major project updates. Here.
Nothing has changed since last month, but I will note that we are working on closeout of the wastewater treatment plant project. We have a new district engineer from USDA. Unfortunately, he's the only one in the entire state for RUS. So he's not terribly responsive, and he does things very differently than the prior engineer, Mike Sterinsky, who I worked with for 25 years. So unfortunately, we're having to do a lot more things to satisfy him than we ever had to do before. We are working through that. Tanya Galantine, who is the finance side of USDA, has been very helpful in trying to navigate those waters with the new engineer. And so we're working to close it out with Moss Adam, or with Jones and Hall is helping us on the bond side of things. We may have to extend the bond closing date for CoBank past November 1st, depending on how long Washington, D.C. legal takes to review the documents. But Dave Fama and James Rosizniak both agree that the resolution the board adopted previously allows either Rick or I to execute that extension so that we can get it through and do that. So, but that is on track. The last bits of the wastewater treatment plant are going very well. We've had a couple of hiccups with some PLCs that have been resolved. And a card that failed, had nothing to do with the project. It just failed and it's inhibiting them from doing the next step. They stepped up and said, we have an extra one. We'll bring one. So we'll pay them directly for an extra one of the sub-consultants. So that is closing out well. Other than that, everything is on track.
Eric, are you satisfied with the propane project to protect the vaporizers and put a roof on before?
We are working with Stantec to bring their drawings from 50% design to biddable design. So that is ongoing.
Oh, so it's not been big.
No, it would have to come for this board.
I thought some of the work for vaporizer or roof was ongoing. We were shooting for.
We're doing design. We're in design. Yeah. So yes, so that'll be bid and be finished hopefully at the very end of this fiscal year. I think I know what you're remembering, probably from EOP. I think Brandy mentioned that we're going to buy the vaporizers ourselves. We're going to buy the third vaporizer. We'll have someone install it for us, but if we're going to purchase it and we can have someone install it, we won't have to publicly bid that component of it. The roof is maybe that's what you're remembering, but the roof, we're working on the design to send that out to public bid.
So issues of digging through heavy snow to get at the big.
We might have one more winter of that. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions on major project updates?
Do we know anything about election directors?
And the filing deadline is next Friday?
Next Friday.
Understanding?
That is correct.
And
With an extension to the
extended
13th.
to the 13th,
If not all three incumbents file. Correct.
Next week.
Okay, any other questions on major projects? Okay, let's move on to the general manager report, number 11.
Everything I've been working on is all coming to fruition in all these resolutions. So thank you, board.
Thank you.
We will, the one thing I will talk about is that we will want to start building the RFP for the electric soon, and then I'll be tapping Bob to remind me of those three names that we got.
Okay.
So
For the rate study.
For the rate study, correct. So and we need to start building that RFP. So that's probably the most important next thing we'll be working on after the water wastewater rate hearing.
Yep.
And the fire hearing 218. Those two, followed by that as being the next most important.
Can I have to ask, why is electric not on the project chart? Or am I overseeing?
It's under board activities, electric rate study.
Yep, right there.
Oh, okay, it's under board activity.
Because it's political.
I see.
Okay. Did you want to move on to the operations report, Eric? All right, let's go to 12, operations report.
Starting off with fire, again, thanks for everybody who attended the Kirkwood Summer Festival. Thought it was a successful event. We're still tallying the numbers and I haven't gotten the final report from Terry just yet. We still got some invoices that we have to pay as well. But all in all, I thought it was really fun to see so many families in Kirkwood on that day. Historically, it was sort of a lot of drinking associated. This one, it was just a lot of fun. Dunk tank and the water features, and it was just
And the fire drill.
And the fire, yeah, and of course we had a fire call right during the event.
But at
so-
least it was local, so you didn't have to drive it.
Yeah, we got to walk to that one.
Yeah.
Are you running anything across something like that too?
Yeah, we're batting pretty good there on that. So for year to date, we're up to 84 calls. For the month of July, we had 11 calls. Numerous alarm calls, a few medical calls, but there were 2 motor vehicle accidents, which involved extrication. And it's funny, when we train on something, the next week we have that happen. And it's happened twice for us this year. But the crews have been doing a really good job. And I really just want to shout out to all the volunteers. I really appreciate all that they do to step up and to continue to work hard, as well as, train as best they can after hours on their own time. It makes a difference. The other notable call for July was we had a lightning strike last Friday evening across from Cables Lake near the Cables Lake or Caltrans maintenance station. Single tree strike. And Captain Gomez was a single responder to the call initially. And then Doug and myself came along to support, but did a great job. Good stop on that. And we got released for engine 314 from US Forest Service. But they said you guys, Doug and Joel, did a nice job. So good job.
Rick, could I ask the 2 traffic or serious calls? They were both outside of Kirkwood, I presume.
One was at the dam at Cables Lake. The other one was at near Oyster Creek, going towards Silver Lake.
And you mentioned extrication, but we would only show up. We only had 1 person, I'm guessing, or was it more than 1?
The first call at the dam, it was 2 people initially, myself and the other Captain Patterson. And then we had support from Eastern Alpine County, as well as CHP and others that showed up, Lake Valley.
Was there an extrication with only 1 Kirkwood person?
Yes. Well, no, basically I was running the incident command and Spencer was down there initiating the extrication. He was able to kind of stabilize, figure things out, and then more resources showed up and helped. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have good mutual aid relationships, because if we have something in Kirkwood, they're going to come help us. So it works out really well. Moving on to playground, unless there's any questions about fire. We had some vandalism last Saturday, and former board member Bob Endy actually called me and said, "Hey, did you know that the monkey bars are laying on their side?" Staff went over, secured the area, but we're not sure who was messing around. Like, it looked like they undid some bolts and lifted it up out of the sleeves. And we were able to put everything back, put the bolts back in. Everything's working just fine. I don't know if somebody was just playing around, but we did contact Alpine County Sheriff's and said, "Hey, something's going on here." So they were aware of it, but everything's fine. So just kind of a weird occurrence. It's a pretty big piece of equipment. It would take a few people to lift it up. It wasn't like it fell over, got pushed over. Just somebody was out there doing stuff. But thanks, Brandy, for getting the crews to get it back up so quick. For electric, as you know, we contracted Norberg to come and replace the conduit from the transformer by the treatment plant over to the vault over here on Loop Road. That work has been complete today. We had an outage to tie in the conduit to the vault itself. There'll be 2 more outages as we pull wire and connect all the racks into the vault. But crew's been working hard and trying to basically reestablish that before winter, so we have some redundancy in our system.
And we did contact any impacted parties for the outage.
We did. It was just the lift
Very
feed and Volcano, and basically lifts were the only one impacted. They're off on Friday, so we try to work with the Vail or Kirkwood Resort schedule to make it less of an impact.
Yeah, sure.
I think we talked enough about water. Eric stole my thunder on propane with the 3rd vaporizer. We did remove the old equipment, so we're getting closer. Solid waste, the green waste container will be flipped out continuously as we go along. I know it gets filled up pretty quick, but we try to get it removed and replaced as soon as possible. But we would appreciate the community's help not putting things that are not green waste related into that container. Plywood, sheetrock, bags of garbage, staff will physically have to remove, or if we can't get it, we might get charged for that. So again, just keep it to the green waste. And then the other thing with solid waste is you'll notice some very unattractive white spray paint that says clip on it. We had an issue where the clips on the sides, even though there's a padlock associated with it, the customer would come up and say, well, it's locked. Well, it's really not. There's a carabiner that you have to unlock to open the container. So to prevent that from happening and having people perceive that it's locked, we moved a clip to the front of the dumpster. And so far that's working pretty well. There's no padlock associated with it. But staff, after they welded it, they needed to spray paint it to keep it from rusting. They also painted a clip on there. We're gonna paint it green, make it look pretty, put some stickers on there that says clip. But again, it's a little bit of a change. We know it doesn't look very exciting, but it's definitely needed because the bear's been around quite a bit this last 2 or 3 weeks. And so if you use the garbage cans, please clip it because the bear's gonna pull all that stuff out. And then
Definitely easier to clip,
yeah,
especially arthritis in your hands.
good. Well, let us know if there's an issue or one isn't
I
working
got your
right.
white just to make sure you could see it.
Oh, you can definitely see it.
I think that they should stay white. You would not believe the amount of calls we receive, people saying your dumpster's locked because they don't know how to work a carabiner. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing.
The white's good.
Leave them white, Rick,
Okay,
or make them fuchsia or pink,
they might be
hot
good.
pink, safety pink. They can't miss them.
Snow removal contracts is the last thing, and yes, they'll go out in August. And that concludes operations report unless there's any questions from the board.
We just want to get back to the summer festival and make sure we thank specifically Jennifer Herbert, with the KCA, who runs the summer festival committee, organizing all, for a lot of time effort. We had a number of volunteers working in registration, food and bev. Certainly our firefighters themselves who are out there making that splash area fun. Captain Gomez, I don't know if I should thank or be angry at, who brought the dunk tanks. Some of us were in, drove to Reno, I think, to grab it for us, to bring it down. And people made donations to help dunk firefighters and other members of the public who wanted to jump in there as well. The water was cold. I feel like you put ice in there for us. I don't know. But it was a really fun event. So thank you to Jen for that. And then certainly to Ricky and Kerber Mountain Resort for the continued funding and support of that through the Epic Promise, which the event would not happen without upwards of about $20,000 of in-kind gifts to come through that. So thank you to everyone who made it happen. And then, of course, thanks for everyone for coming and showing up and making it a really fun event. Okay, let's move on to, we're on to 13 standing committee reports. So let's start with finance.
I think we've covered everything. Finance goes through the rate studies of us water and wastewater. We talked about that. Of course, the financial reporting, and so everything's covered.
Okay, EOP.
Nothing to add.
Communications, our reports in the packet. I will just note how I said before is one of the things that we'll talk about is having a newsletter article about having mailing addresses and things like that, given the feedback from the 218 process, just that remind people that they have to do that. Personnel, I think we've covered the topics there already with the housing in particular, IT and cybersecurity.
Then we didn't.
And LAPCO did not as well. All right, we don't have any temporary fire security committees for 14. General board discussion, item 15 on any board discussion. Okay, not hearing any. So item 16, closed session. The board's going to move into closed session here to discuss 3 items, A, B, and C. Closed session regarding general manager retirement, closed session regarding general manager appointment, and closed session regarding conference with labor negotiators. We'll reconvene after the closed session to report out any actions after that. So see that. Hey. There we go. All right. Board is returned from closed section on agenda item 16. For item 16A, closed session regarding general manager retirement. I'm reporting that the board has unanimously accepted the general manager's notification of retirement for personal reasons. Retirement is allowed per his contract, and the retirement is effective at the close of business September 5th, 2025. For item 16B, closed session regarding general manager appointment, the board has asked labor negotiators to explore options and report back to the board. And for item 16C, closed session regarding conference with labor negotiators. I have appointed myself and John Schroeder to be the labor negotiators to fill the general manager position. I just want to say thank you to Eric and wish him all the best in his retirement. And we'll certainly talk about that more later, but just wanted to take that time now to thank you for his service and certainly wish him all the best starting on September 6th. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 17, which is adjournment. Our next regular scheduled board meeting is September 5th, at 2 p.m. and we'll see you then. Thank you.